I'm putting my email, there we go. I'm putting my email address in the chat. It's crystal@crystalcaudill.com. If we don't get to your question, make sure you email me and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. So there's that.
Okay. So this workshop is called Publishing Paths. And so Crystal Caudill, right?
Mm-hmm.
I hope I got it right. Okay. Is our teacher for this one. She's an award-winning author of dangerously good historical romance with Caudill Publications in it, and is an experienced workshop presenter. As a former educator, she has a heart for teaching and encouraging others to grow in their God-given callings to write. She is a member of ACFW, Faith, Hope, and Love, and is represented by Tamala Hancock Murray of the Steve Lobby Agency. Learn more about Crystal and her books at crystalcaudill.com, where you can sign up for her author newsletter. So Crystal says she would like to take questions at the end. So if you will put your questions in the chat, go ahead and do the type question and use a colon and then put your question after that. That'll make it a lot easier for me to find it. And so that's it. Here we go.
Okay, I am going to share my screen. We're going to see how this goes. There we go. And then we're going to start. Oops, that's in my way. Play. All right, are you guys seeing the screen that says Publishing Paths?
Yes.
Perfect. I want to let you know that you will have access to the very detailed notes and slides if you visit crystalcaudill.com/publishing paths, and I'll have a QR code at the end of the presentation where you can pull out your phones and pull it up real quick that way. But don't worry about trying to take all the notes down, because there's a lot of information that we are going to cover here in a very short amount of time. So before we get started, I want to do a quick prayer, because prayer is so important. Dear Lord and Heavenly Father, just thank you so much for these women and men who are coming before you, ready to seek those publishing paths and see what you have in store for the ministry you've called them to. Just guide them, help them to know which path they need to take, and help me get through this presentation clearly, quickly, and with enough time for people to ask their questions. So in your holy and precious name we pray. Amen. So we're going to dive right in. So I want to say it's almost every writer's dream to one day be published. I got pulled into it kicking and screaming, so I won't say everyone's, but it's almost every writer's dream to see their books at like their favorite bookstores, up on Amazon, and to see people reading their work. But there are a lot of publishing options out there nowadays, and so this dream is more likely to come true than ever. And there are 4 main publishing paths that you are going to run into as options. You have your vanity press, which, warning, don't take, traditional publishing, indie publishing or self-publishing, and something called hybrid publishing. And we're going to go over all 4 of these in detail. And the first type of publishing is one that you should run from. Vanity presses are companies who charge a high price for author services that include editing, formatting, cover design, and marketing, but then they outsource everything at the absolute cheapest price that they can, which leaves the author with poor quality work and no way to market, and all the costs are demanded up front. So we'll look at the warning signs for those a little later. But the next one we're going to talk about is one most people are more familiar with, and that's your traditional publishing. Traditional publishers are companies who buy the rights to an author's manuscript. The author is paid through a royalty and an advance depending on the size of the company. Royalties are a percentage of the sales granted to the author through a contract. So this is written down in a contract and is legally binding, and it's what they will give to you after you've sold books. Advances are the payments made in advance of the sale of the book. So in order to get that author and say, we're going to publish you, we'll give you this amount of money for your manuscript. The author does not receive royalty payments until the sales of the book have exceeded the advance paid to the author. There are multiple levels of traditional publishers ranging from small press, mid-sized press, to the big house publishers. Small press publishers will still pay royalties to their authors. However, they generally put less books out per year, have a smaller distribution, less marketing power, and may not offer any advance. Most of the time, they do not require an agent in order to submit to them. Smaller presses also tend to take on more unpublished authors and are more likely to take risks on out-of-the-box stories. So there's lots of positives to small presses. Mid-sized publishers follow the same format, but generally they put out more books per year, have a larger distribution. Sometimes they have more marketing power, it depends on their budgets, and they usually offer authors advances on their royalties. They also tend to be harder to get into as their focus is more profit and mission driven, and they may accept submissions by the author, but usually they're going to require an agent. And then you have the large size publishers who are the ones who are the ones people are most familiar with, like your Bethany House, your Revell, Tyndale, all of those. They pay advances and royalties to their authors, have a larger distribution, wield more marketing power, and put out more books per year. However, they are much harder to get into, especially as an unpublished author. They require an agent to work with and are less likely to take risks. Independent publishing, aka indie or self-publishing, is where you as an author take on the role of a traditional publisher, and all those roles that are included in that. Your editing, your cover design, formatting, marketing, distribution, all of it. Some of these aspects are usually outsourced and require an upfront cost before you ever publish a single copy. The benefit is you have control over everything and you get all the profits made from your books. Then you have hybrid publishing. Hybrid publishing combines the elements of traditional and self-publishing. Hybrid authors are those who are both traditionally published and self-published. So hybrid publishing is different than what a hybrid author is. I wanted to pull that distinction. Hybrid publishers, for the most part, function like a traditional publisher, but the authors subsidized most or all of the cost of publishing and are not given an advance on their royalties. So we're going to take an overview look at the traditional publishing path first, and we'll do it the same for self-publishing and take a look at hybrid publishing. So first one we're going to look at is traditional publishing. And we're going to start with looking at getting a contract with a big house publisher, because that's the most detailed steps. And all the smaller publishers kind of either take out a step or don't require as much of that same step. And I'll explain more as we hit that. So step one of pursuing a traditional book contract is to finish your manuscript. What does that mean? Unfortunately, it does not mean that you typed the end on your manuscript last night and are ready to send it off. I know it's exciting, and I know you want to rush the process and you really want to see your books on your shelf. However, let me urge you to go slow with this process. You are not on a deadline yet at this point. Take all the time you need to complete these steps before ever considering sending your manuscript to an agent. Take a look. Have you done developmental edits? Those are your big picture edits. Have you sent your manuscript to critique partners who will give you honest feedback, not a family member? You want people who understand writing, who will be kind but honest about what you need to do. Examine your manuscript for showing versus telling, deep point of view, sentence structure, grammar, weasel words, typos. These are all things you need to look at before you ever move on to step two. You need to ask yourself, is it as perfect as you can get it at this moment in time? It will never be perfect, so give yourself grace. But do ask if you have given it your absolute best that you can give, and would God accept it as an offering of your heart? If you haven't taken your book through this process, it's not ready for step two yet. When you put your work in front of agents and editors, it needs to be the absolute best you can make it with the help of others at that time. You're going to grow as a writer, and that bar of what is your best at that time is going to change. But whatever level you are, you want to get it as best as you can before you send it in. Then you have step 2, which is to get an agent, which is why a lot of you come to these conferences as well. So first, let's talk about what a literary agent does. A literary agent is a person who believes in your writing and will champion you to their connections in the publishing world. It does not guarantee you a contract, but it does increase your chances. Publishers look at agent and authors as those who have been vetted and are worth their time to take a closer look at. Your agent is going to be the go-between for 90% of the things you do before and after you get the publishing contract. When looking for an agent, I recommend you research what agents and agencies are out there. What are their requirements? What is their reputation? Who do they submit to? What authors do they have signed with their company? Follow the agency blogs if they have one. Get to know each agent to determine who would be the best fit for you. Attend panels at conferences, listen to their answers, and decide who and who will not be a good fit for you. Not every agent is going to work for your story. Once you decide which agents you want to submit to, examine their submission guidelines, follow it exactly how they state. Some want a query letter with only a specific subject line, while others want a query letter and a proposal at the same time. Whatever they want, give it to them in the exact way that the submission guidelines describe. This step alone will set you apart from others. Also, be sure to tailor every email you send out to the individual agent you are submitting to, and do not send a group email to all the agents on your list. One email per agent. What is a query letter? The query letter has one purpose, and it is to convince the agent to read or request your work. Consider it your sales pitch. If you attend a conference and have a one-to-one meeting, it's essentially a verbal query letter. So you're doing your pitching in person. A proposal is different from a query letter in that it will help an agent determine within minutes if they will consider you further or if they will send a polite no thank you note. A proposal has many parts, but the main things to know is that it attempts to present a brief summary of your book, your platform numbers, which is how many people you can reach on your own, marketing potential, and the first 3 chapters of your actual manuscript. This is a huge deal. You will really want to do your research on what good proposals look like, and then put as much effort into creating it as you did your manuscript. If an agent likes your proposal, they may request the full manuscript. From there, they will make a decision on whether or not they are willing to partner with you. If they want to partner with you, you will sign a legally binding contract which details what percentage of your advance or royalties they will receive from any publishing contract you get. If an agent requires you to pay them, they are not a legitimate or trustworthy agent. Agents make money when you do, and payments come to them through the publisher, not you. You should not be writing a check to your agent. The publisher will do that. Step 3 is to submit to editors, which this is what your agent will do on your behalf. And there are multiple types of editors. However, there's only one that matters before you get a contract, and that is your acquisitions editor. An acquisition editor is the editor at the publishing house who considers if the manuscript is worth taking to the publishing board and fighting for its publication. If they feel like it has a fighting chance, then when they present it at the publishing board meeting, they are going to be the ones who help fight for it and say, this is the book we need to do. The publishing board is where editors bring all those books they think are worthy. of adding to the publishing list. And then that board takes into consideration the markability of the story, the likelihood of making a profit, if your platform numbers will help lessen some of the risk they take on with a debut author. And it's not about the quality of your writing at this point. It's all about how they think you will compete in a very tight market. Each book they sign is a gamble, and they are essentially looking at the odds. Based on their decision, you will either be offered a rejection, a request to resubmit later when you have better numbers, or an offer for a contract. Your agent will be the person they communicate with, and then your agent will communicate with you. Just because you are offered a contract, that doesn't mean you should take it. Talk with your agent, trust their wisdom, pray over it, and then make the decision that God leads you to. After you have a contract, your manuscript will go through multiple editors. You'll have developmental or substantive edits, copy edits, line edits, proofreads, galleys. There's a lot of that goes into the publishing process. So step 4 is kind of that after the contract overview. The work doesn't end after you get the contract. In fact, it picks up. Your manuscript will go through multiple editors, the ones that I just discussed. You will have deadlines, have to balance working on more than one book at a time while preparing and managing your marketing. From the time of contract to the release date of your book, it generally takes a year or more. I signed my contract for my debut novel in October of 2020, and my debut novel didn't release until February 2022. So that kind of gives you that idea of what the timeline looks like for a traditional publisher. You will be expected to help with the marketing. In fact, the general rule of thumb that I was told, publishers expect you, the author, to do twice as much marketing as they do. So be prepared for that. Part of your advance money should be set aside for the publishing costs, for the marketing costs. This is the reality of the economy we live in. You have entered a partnership and you will be expected to carry a good portion of the weight. And you will also be the one expected to interact with your readers, launch team members, and blog reviewers. This is a job. This isn't just a hobby. There are going to be things that you enjoy and things you don't enjoy, but this marketing aspect is part of that job. So after the contract, it becomes a new game of how do I balance it all? But that doesn't mean you can't do it. Lots of authors do. I'm still figuring it out, but you can do it, I promise. Step 5 is now you're published. Once your book is out, celebrate, just keep right on going. Write more books, keep on marketing, start the process over with writing proposals and submitting to editors. The loop kind of really never ends as long as you want to keep writing. So there are different pros and cons to traditional publishing. Pro side, the bulk of your upfront costs belong to the publisher. This doesn't mean that you don't spend any money, but they take on the cost of actually producing the book. Usually you're going to have more marketing reach than you would on your own. They have connections that self-published authors won't have access to. You will have a mediator in your agent to help you work through problems, and you don't have to know all the ins and outs of each step. You have a group of people who are championing your work. However, it's not all roses. You also have your cons. You don't have control over the process or the choices. They may ask you to change something in your novel that you're not happy about changing, and you have to make a decision of, will I go through with this contract or will I not? There are times to break a contract, which you need to talk very thoroughly with your agent. And there are times that you need to go, all right, God, this is not key to my story. I can let this go. I can change this aspect. So you're going to run into those situations. You are under contractual obligation, and there are going to be consequences if you break that contract. That's another con. Oops, I've lost. I don't know what I was meaning when I wrote that note right there, so I'm going to skip over it. you must meet their content requirements and their writing standards. So they're going to have certain expectations that you need to meet. Edgier and riskier content aren't always likely to be picked up by traditional publishers, but like I said, the smaller the publisher, the more likely they're able to take on that riskier, edgier content. So finding your fit for a small, medium, or large press really depends on your story, your needs, and where God wants your story. And you also have little to no idea how your marketing strategies affect your sales. You're not able to check your numbers directly after trying an ad. So there's a lot of pros and there's a lot of cons. I am going to say that no writing path, no publishing path is absolutely perfect or easy. There are always going to be pros and there's always going to be cons. So it's really something you have to pray through. So now we're going to take an overview of the self-publishing path or the indie path. And just because you're self-publishing, it doesn't mean you get to cut corners. If anything, you have to work harder to fight against the fact that there are a large number of self-published books with extremely poor quality. You are also competing against the traditional publishers who have greater reputation, have an established reputation and greater reach, and can throw more money into the advertising. If someone reads your book and it's not the same quality as a traditionally published book, they will likely never read a second attempt on your part. So quality work will earn you a reputation that sets you apart. So this is where patience is a virtue. I beg you not to rush into publishing just because you want it done now and slapped up on Amazon. This is something you really want to take your time on and invest money in. While traditional publishers upfront the money when self-publishing, it's up to you to upfront those costs. So complete your manuscript, make it the best you can on your own, and then you're going to move on to step 2 and send your manuscript to a professional editor. And the order of these steps that I'm going to cover next don't necessarily have to be in that order. When you're self-published, sometimes you have multiple steps going on at the same time. But for the sake of organization, this is step 2. So you want to send your manuscript to a professional editor. While it might be easy to say that you and your critique partners have read and edited your manuscript so many times that it's perfect, it would really behoove you to pay for an actual high quality editor. Outside, unbiased eyes can really help you to push your story to the next level of quality. Carefully evaluate any freelance editor you choose. They often will do a small sample of your work to determine if you are a good fit for each other. You may or may not need content developmental or substantive edits. That's a hard word for me to say. Those are kind of all the same kind of big picture edits. You just may need somebody who deals with grammar and proofreading. No, you cannot throw it up on Grammarly and Pro Writing Aid and it be good enough. It's really important to hire an outside person. And if this is your first novel, I really recommend doing the big picture edits, which will be one cost, then your copy edits and line edits and proofreads, which will be another cost. You are going to have to pay for each level of editing service. If you are looking for an editor, I suggest checking out the Christian Editor Connection, the Christian Pen, or asking those you know who are self-published what editors they recommend. In the notes that I've given you, I've provided links to articles that may help you with this process. Step 3 is titling and a back cover. So it's completely up to you to decide the title and the back cover copy or your blurb. And the title needs to grab your reader's attention and prompt them to read the book, the back of the book. If that blurb does not entice them, they won't even crack the book open to read a single word of your story. So it's really necessary that you make your title and your back cover blurb as best you can and make sure that it matches your genre. So if you don't know what a good blurb looks like, go look at other books in your genre and see how they do it. Look for patterns. Look for the taglines they use, the structure that they use in composing their back cover copy. Examine titles. What kind of titles do this genre tend to have? Do they have 3 words, 20 words? No title has 20 words, by the way. But just that example, go and look and see what other authors who are successful have done. I would recommend asking other author friends and reader friends to help evaluate your blurbs. Does this sound good? Is there anything confusing? What things should I tweak and fix? You want to make it as best you can, and the goal is to get somebody who sees your title on Amazon to click on it, read the blurb, and then buy it. So study the book blurbs from your favorite authors to really learn on how to do that. Cover design. So they say not to judge a book by its cover, but let's be honest, 90%, and I'd say it's more, do allow judgments about the cover to alter their perceptions. Your cover needs to look as professional as a traditional publisher's cover. Many people can tell when someone has self-published their book merely by looking at the cover design. It is worth its weight in gold to have someone who designs book covers for a living to design your book. Yes, you may pay more, but the professional look will make all the difference on how people approach your book. Some companies even offer pre-made covers that you can browse through and have them alter for your book. Make sure your cover matches your genre, your tone, and your story. You don't want somebody to pick up a historical romance looking cover only to discover they bought a contemporary thriller. Book covers set the expectation. So aside from writing a high quality story, this is probably your #1 most important first impression. They're going to see your cover first, sometimes your titles, depending. If they're looking at the spines on a bookstore shelf or if the cover's facing out. But on Amazon, it's that cover. You see the picture before you see the title. I can't tell you how many possibly good stories I've passed up on because I've looked at the cover and I've been like, oh, they didn't feel like they needed to put in the investment into a good quality cover. So does that mean that they didn't invest in their book, that they didn't do an editor? Can I trust the quality of this book and shell out money for this author? And generally I'll pass it up. I'm a snob. I look at the cover and I'm like, I'm judging you based on how much you value your book, and the cover shows me how much you value that book. So I am sorry that I'm a snob, but unfortunately, I'm also not the only one. There's lots of reading groups where this discussion has happened. So do yourself a favor and hire out a good quality cover design. Step 5 is your job to format your interior. Formatting is what makes the inside of the book look pretty, read well, and makes them adaptable to your various reading platforms. So there are programs like Vellum for Macs that you can use to format it yourself. I encourage you to hire it out or learn Vellum or whatever formatting program you're choosing really well. There is a learning curve to it, and formatting can be one tip off to readers that your book is not professionally done. It's really, really important that you get your formatting right. Then you also need to prepare your metadata. And preparing metadata is simply figuring out all the ways readers can find your book if they go to Amazon. What keywords are they going to type in to find your book? Locations, topics, events, time periods, all those things. These are metadata tag words that help them to find it. And this also tells retailers how and where to put your books on the bookshelves. ISBNs must be obtained. They can be purchased by you, which is highly recommended, or you can get the ones that provided to you through your distributor. So I think Drafted Digital has the option that you can buy an ISBN from them. If you use Amazon and you you publish exclusively through Amazon, you don't have to buy your own ISBN, but by going exclusively with Amazon and them giving you a number, you can't use that anywhere else. You can't go to Barnes and Noble and say, well, this number that Amazon gave me is my ISBN. It's not. So if you are planning on selling wider than Amazon, you need to go out and buy an ISBN number. And it's really not that hard. And I can tell you individually how to do that. And I think I put it in the notes where you can look. There's a whole lot of complexity that I don't understand with metadata, but the self-publishing community has a lot of opportunities for education and support. So reach out to other self-published authors, ask them questions, and they are really glad to help you. All right, step 7, market your book. You can't get away from it. This is an ongoing process. You need to market your book for the weeks to months before you publish the book, as well as for months after. A month before and a month after are really your strongest points for marketing. As a self-published author, you will be able to track your marketing practices and determine your return on investment. So what I mean by that is you can pay for an ad and know what your numbers of sales was before the ad, then do the ad and check your numbers and see how that ad affected your sales. Did they go up significantly? Did they only go up a little bit? Did they not go up at all? It helps you determine if it was worth it doing this and if you should do it again. All the marketing a traditional author does, you need to do too, and even more of it. Marketing is a continuous process that won't go away. So it's important to get comfortable with it. I highly recommend the podcast Novel Marketing by Thomas Umstattd Jr. He keeps a good finger on what's going on. However, remember, he's just one man, and not everything he says or anyone else says is gospel. You have to find out what works for you, and trends change without warning. And so you just kind of have to find what works for you and adapt as the economy and markets change. All right, then you get to hit publish. You did it, hooray. However, if you want to make it as a self-published author and have a career, you're going to have to learn to publish multiple books a year. The more you can put out, the more you can stay in readers' minds and the more sales you will make. So take all you've learned and start over again. Just like traditional publishing, there are pros and cons. You have full control over the entire process, including your deadlines. You have the freedom to include whatever content you wish in your story, but be careful. Readers come with genre expectations, and you still need to fulfill those genre expectations. And you're able to examine how your market strategies influence your return on investment. While there's a lot to love about self-publishing, it's not perfect either. For some of us, having control over that deadline is a bad thing. You need the pressure of somebody else behind you to help you with that. You are responsible for the quality of everything, and people will be judging your book on how well you do it. Excuse me. To some degree, traditional authors can blame like bad covers and things like that on the publisher, but when you're the indie author, you're responsible for all of it. You also don't have as much marketing reach as a traditional publisher, and some people do. They become savvy and know how to do these things, but there's a great learning curve to all of it. The indie publishers really have to work hard. The profit margins are more often slim to none. That's not true of all authors, but it takes quite a while in multiple books to begin turning a profit. So even for traditional authors, I think I heard that the average is 10 books before you start making, I don't know that a livable wage would fall under that, but it takes about 10 books before you start seeing a steady income. But you tend to have more profit as a self-published author per book than you do as a traditional. And it's just how royalties and all that falls out. So pros and cons either way. We'll talk about some hard truths about publishing here in a few minutes. Hybrid publishing is a combination of traditional and self-publishing. It's sort of this middle road where the author pays the cost but hands over the control and the overseeing of the details to someone else to achieve that professional quality. According to Caudill.com, you can see a general comparison here. Take it with a grain of salt, though, because everyone, no matter what the publishing venue you choose, will have to do their own marketing. So I feel like their graph is a little wrong. But within the hybrid publishing industry, there are three types of publishers. You have the partnership, where the author approaches the publisher, pays the publishing costs up front, and the publisher takes over the publishing process. Then you have agent assisted or run, where the agent feels that the story you've submitted is better suited for hybrid publishing, and they take over the publishing process for the author, but the author is still upfronting these costs. Crowdfunding. Hybrid publisher offers a crowdfunding platform to help the author collect the upfront fees. So this is kind of like those Kickstarter programs. Sometimes hybrid publishers will use Kickstarter, they'll use their own program. As a self-published author, I see lots of people using Kickstarter to help with those upfront costs. So there's lots of ways that you can help reduce how much money you're upfronting in all these different formats. Vanity presses and hybrid publishers can sound very similar. And so the Independent Book Publishers Association codified 11 criteria for knowing if a hybrid publisher is reputable or not. So when you look at a hybrid publisher, compare it to this list. A hybrid publisher must define a mission and vision for its publishing program, vet submissions, that means they have to decide if they're going to take them or not, commit to truth and transparency in their business practices. So they're going to tell you how much things cost, provide a negotiable, easy to understand contract for each book published. They will publish under their own imprints and ISBNs. They will publish to industry standards, ensure editorial design and production quality, pursue and manage a range of publishing rights. They will provide distribution services, demonstrate respectable sales, and they will pay the authors a higher than standard royalty. Sometimes it can be hard to discern between a vanity press and a hybrid publisher, so you need to watch out for these warning signs to determine if they are a vanity press. If they accept any book that is submitted to them, that's a warning sign. If they have hidden costs and low quality services, that's another warning. Look at the books that they said they've published. If they won't share the titles of the books they've published, I would run away. You need to be able to see the quality of work that they are putting out there. If they charge you a reading fee for submitting your manuscript, that is a big red flag. You should not be charged at all. If they have an excessive use of flattery, they're trying to get your money, or they make over the mountain promises like, I'll get this Hollywood star to endorse your book. So you need to be careful of those kinds of promises. So you can check out more warning signs at a link I provided at the end. We're almost there, that you can download. But real quick, I want to talk about the hard truth about publishing. While getting your book published feels like the ultimate dream, there are some hard truths that need. Oh, yes.
We have about 12 minutes left.
Yep.
Okay.
I have a timer going, so I keep on track.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yep, you're good. So there are some hard truths that need to be acknowledged no matter what publishing path you choose. The path to publishing is going to cost you a significant amount of time and money. So think about the cost of memberships to writing organizations, attending conferences, taking classes, buying reference material, writing craft books. All these are part of that cost of learning how to write. And that's all before you even start the process of seeking publishing. Which leads me to point out that you're not going to make it rich as an author. What they show on Hallmark Channel and in the movies are more fantasy than reality. I think I heard it said that it takes an author an average of 10 published books before they're able to make a profitable career, which I've kind of already said. If you are in this for the money, you might need to have a reality check. Many authors, even big name authors, carry second part-time and even full-time jobs in addition to their writing. Now, that's not to scare you away from writing. I'm just trying to give you the reality that this isn't necessarily going to be a career that lands you the nice cushy mansion in the Hamptons or wherever. The J.K. Rowlings of the world and the Stephen Kings and the James Pattersons are more of an anomaly than they are a reality for most authors. The last hard truth I want to talk about is there is no escaping marketing. For your book to be successful, you're going to have to put yourself out there. Have a website where people can find you. Have a newsletter where people can connect with you. Create launch teams. Be a part of online reader groups and interact with others. But don't always be promoting yourself or your books. Recommend other authors, network, get to know each other, and you guys can help each other out. That's how the Christian writing community is. We love to support and help each other. Take classes on how to market yourself in your books. Janaire had a wonderful class earlier today. I recommend you go rewatch it. Without marketing, your book can be published, but it's not going to reach your readers. That's the purpose of marketing, is to get your readers aware of your book. So go ahead and get it in your mind that whatever path you choose, marketing is going to be involved. Now, as Christians, we have a wonderful hope that other authors do not have. Based on the gift each one of us has received, use it to serve others as good managers of the varied grace of God. And that's 1 Peter 4:10. We have a purpose beyond putting our names out there. This is a calling from God. Our definition of success isn't based in the monetary success, though we may like to see some of that success and have that. The ultimate success is to show readers the hope and the light of Christ while giving them a story they can enjoy. Even if you're writing fiction where Christ is not directly referenced, the way your characters act and grow will all point to Christ, or at least we hope it does. So be encouraged. This isn't an easy gig, but it's the gig you're called to do, and God's going to use it to draw you closer to him and to get his message out there. So we have a hope and a greater purpose. So which writing path or publishing path is right for you? I encourage you to have an open heart and mind to the paths out there. Prayerfully seek that path that God is guiding you to. My approach was to shoot for the stars. At least if I don't make it, I'll hit the moon. This means I decided to try for the traditional publishing path first. But I was open to self-publishing, though not initially, but I was, if that's where God was directing me to. So remember, your path to publish is more of a journey with God than it is an arrival. And also, God loves you individually, and thus he has an individual plan tailored just for you. Your writing journey is not going to look like anyone else's, just like you don't look like anyone else. He loves you that much that your journey is tailored just for you. So it may not look like you would expect it to, or even what you want, but if God is leading you, he will bless you in ways you never dreamed. So I tossed a fire hose amount of information at you. I'm going to take your questions in just a second. Just to let you know, the QR code on the right will take you to the PDF for the slides and detailed notes. If you'd like to sign up for my newsletter, you get a free download of Counterfeit Truth, which is a novella to lead into my newsletter. I'm going to leave it up here for about 10 more seconds, and then I'm going to close this down so I can see faces for questions. But Izzy, if you want to go ahead and start hitting me with those questions.
Yep. Okay. So the first question we have is, do most authors use Word to write their stories, or can you use LibreOffice to write stories?
So let's see, did I stop share?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. And now I got to figure out where all spaces went to. Okay, there we go. So every author is different. I use Scrivener to start out with writing my stories. When you get to the editing process and you're working with a publisher or an editor, you are going to have to use Word. So I would recommend downloading a version of Word. I don't like Office 360 because I hate being always tied to the internet, but you are still able to download versions where you're not required to be part of 360. It's been a while, but I know it's out there. So use whatever you want to for your personal, but be aware that you will probably have to download Microsoft Word at some point.
We have one more. It says, could you review the difference between hybrid authors and publishers again, please? And also,
Yes.
do you have an example of a hybrid publisher?
Um, oh, now that you've asked me an example of a hybrid publisher, I've lost the name of it. I'll have to get back to you on that. I might open up a side window and see if I can find the name. But the difference between a hybrid author is a hybrid author just refers to an author who is both traditionally published and self-published. So technically, because I have this novella published on my own, I'm a hybrid author. But my other four books, are through a traditional publisher. So a hybrid author is just one who's done both. A hybrid publisher is just a type of publisher where the author pays the costs or a portion of the costs, and then they do all the work. Excuse me. Does that help?
I think you answered it. It says, what should an author published by a small traditional publisher be aware of if she decides to self-publish those books herself later? Is there anything? Thanks.
So you are entering a contract with the small publisher. So make sure in your contract before you sign it with them that you have the ability to get the rights back. I think that's probably your number one thing you need to make sure. Check your contract and make sure that you can get your rights back. I've seen some things go south where people didn't get their rights back, and so they lost access to those books forever. So just reading contracts carefully to make sure you get them. Now, what those terms are for getting those rights back, I can't tell you off the top of my head, but with my traditional publisher, it's based on sales. And if it falls below a certain number, I can go to them and request it, but they're not automatically going to revert them to me. So you have to know if it's something they will automatically do, if you have to request it, and if you can even request it. So pay attention to what your contract says.
Someone says, can you name any ethical hybrid publishers that you would recommend? And someone else put up their Redemption Press. Maybe that was.
I think that's the one that I was thinking of. I don't have any experience with them. I have not looked into too many hybrid publishers. I did a lot of research for it so I could present the information, but to tell you which ones are ethical and ones I would recommend, I hesitate to say anything because I've not personally looked into them, and I don't want to say something and then be completely wrong. So do your homework, check, see what who they published, have their books won awards, have their authors won awards, what do their covers look like. They should be upfront and clear with this stuff. That's part of the transparency part of what the one group who came up with the code says. So
I don't see any more questions. So I think you covered everything really well. It was an excellent presentation.
well, I'm glad. I wish I would have known all the different options when I was starting out. So it was my goal to give you guys something clear and concise that gives you the whole picture, because there are a lot of steps involved. If you come up with questions later, you can email me at crystal@crystalcaudill.com, and I'm putting that in the chat. You can visit my website for any information. I have writer resources on my website. I have a real heart for helping writers. And I'm putting the website where you can download the PDF in the notes as well. I don't think there was a dash, so I can spell publishing paths. So I believe that website will get you where you need to. So
Well, thank you so much, Crystal. It was just wonderful.
you're welcome. So thank you guys. I really appreciate you being here. And I am praying for each one of you as you choose which path you need to take or are called to take.